Hi everybody, Tim Hughes here. I'm the CEO and co-founder of DLA Ignite. With me today, I've got David Alston. David and I are going to talk about finding your marketing digital community. Before we go anywhere, David, where can people find you? Your LinkedIn, your email?
Yeah, it's mostly my name. So it's, on Twitter at David Alston, LinkedIn, / David Alston. So fortunate to have gotten it early on. Same idea.
You picked the things up pretty early, so you're pretty social as a person. And we met on social, didn't we? So
yeah, no, you were on a list of top people in the marketing and sales, social sales kind of stuff. I saw you on the list. I checked out everyone on that list I didn't know. I knew about half of them on the list from my previous life. And I checked out everyone else, literally leaving, I'll call it a digital breadcrumb. And you and one other person saw that breadcrumb. You reached out.
I took the bait.
You took the bait. You followed through on your principles, and you reached out in a good way. And you said, "Hey, we should chat. Looks like we have lots of things in common." And then we just went from there. So and here we are.
So your ex Radian 6.
Mm-hmm.
So what's your journey to get you to where you are now in terms of your marketing expertise?
Well, I mean, for me, it started off where I always had a love of both technology and, I guess, strategy and marketing. I didn't know about the strategy and marketing part first when I was a kid, but so when I went to university, I started off in engineering because I thought I always loved that technology part of things. I used to do a lot of coding when I was a kid as a summer job. And I thought I was honestly going to be working in tech startups, but as a coder. And then it was only in that first year that I discovered that physics was not my thing. I didn't really like physics. And I figured, well, if it's going to be a lot of physics, probably not what I want to be in. So I flipped over to the business degree, fell in love with marketing, advertising, strategy, all that kind of good stuff, entrepreneurship. And then really my career has been in working in either technology-based companies in a marketing role or sometimes on the ad side or PR agency side. So I flipped between agency back to, client side, back to agency, kind of throughout my career. And Radian 6 was definitely a tenure where I got a chance to do some more global marketing on the B2B side. I'm generally more of a B2B person as well. I've done a little bit of B2C, but it's mostly B2B.
So we're here to talk about finding your marketing digital community. So what's the process that you go through as a marketer in doing that?
Yeah. So as you know, like on the B2B side, you're generally talking about hundreds or thousands or maybe even tens of thousands of people, but you're not talking about millions and hundreds of thousands, right? So really you can, in many cases, you could literally list the brands or the companies that you want to talk to. So you know who they are, you know who they are, they're online or they're in a list, and say, okay, so I want to talk to these brands. And often you can also find the people that you're wanting to talk to. And so that's the first thing. The second thing would be generally in your space that you're selling into, the space where you're creating a product or your service that you're passionate about. There are other people that are going to be passionate about it as well in terms of the space, not necessarily your product, but the space.
So these are not necessarily people you're going to sell to.
No,
but they're passionate about the area.
Exactly. So for example, you're very passionate about social selling and social marketing. So I would consider you an influencer in that space. And I'm also potentially an influencer in that space. So
you are an influencer in that space.
Thank you. But so from that perspective, if there was a company, a startup that was focused on maybe creating some digital product or digital service around social selling, the two of us plus maybe another 200 people should be on a list of either advocates / influencers / people that are passionate about it that they should get to know. They literally should say, okay, I got to get to know Tim. I got to get to know David. Why? Well, I can learn from them. I can see what they're talking about. I can see where they're going. And often they want to know about the latest and greatest in like new technologies because it kind of fits into their vision to where the whole space needs to go. Earlier, we were talking about, this, evolution that so many companies need to be on in terms of, embracing social when it comes to marketing, and there's still lots that aren't doing that yet, right? So So there needs to be more of that happening. So the thing is, if that company was like, okay, well, we want to see that same thing happen, we want that evolution, then ideally you'd want to find those 200 or so people that are the influencers of that general community around that evolution, and you'd want to get to know them. It's, I mean, as simple as that, honestly. Yeah.
Well, I mean, this is kind of the way that you found me, which is that and the way that you do it is that you look at a list or create a list and then leave a digital breadcrumb.
Yeah.
And see if they react.
Yeah. Yeah. I used to call when, back in the old days when Twitter was more of a thing. It's not really, I don't find it really much of a thing anymore. It's like in the old days, but you could follow someone, right? Or you could retweet something. And to me, that was like, call it a digital handshake. It was like, hey, I'm here, right? And generally, if you were flipping through your notifications, you might say, well, who's that? And you might click on them and go, oh, that person's interesting. And you may check them out and go, hey, that's someone I'd like to get to know. That was simple. But on LinkedIn, at least now, of course, LinkedIn always shows generally people that have dropped by often. And of course,
if you buy the premium edition, it shows who's looked at your profile. Yeah,
exactly. And I know in my case, I was premium for a long time. I'm not premium now, but what I found too is that if you check your LinkedIn every day, you will generally see at least a few of them, or even twice a day, you'll see the last 3. And often you'll be able to see the same breadcrumbs, as part of that process. So even if, people listening don't have premium, they can still get a pretty good idea of the people that have dropped by from that perspective.
Yeah, someone's just sent me a white paper over LinkedIn. They're connected to me. They just sent me a white paper. And I thought it was really funny, partly because it doesn't create a conversation. It was like, really? You've sent me a what? You haven't looked at my profile. You do not know that I'm not interested in any of that. And there's still a lot of it going on.
Yeah, well, I love some of the examples that you had in your social selling book, which I used to use similar examples. Like walking into a party example, right? Walking up to someone and just starting to talk about yourself, or yes. or literally walking up and taking a white paper and slapping it up against your chest and not saying anything. Who does that, right? So why the hell would you ever do that?
Well, I know. Why giving a white paper to a stranger? Do you think that actually generates any business? And maybe David, in 3 times out of 100, the person actually goes, "Oh yeah," but the thing that amazes us that actually some people think 3 times out of 100 that's actually really good.
Yeah,
and you go, really? Is your are your goals set so low that that's okay for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think the reason why people are okay with those stats is because they come from the carpet bombing days of advertising, right? Which was, if you got 1.5% of your carpet bombing on people like blasting attention at them, it was like, yes, this is awesome. And so they assume that same principle, if they got 3% on social, wow, this is even better. I'm going to carpet bomb the heck out of everyone by social now. What they don't realize, of course, like we both believe in, is that social is called social for a reason. It is social because it's communications, it's building relationships, it's two-way dialogue, it's listening, it's engaging. That's what it should be.
It creates conversations. And we always have to say to people, what creates a sale? Well, it's a conversation. White papers, brochures, webinars don't create conversations. But quite often people think, oh yeah, but it takes a long time. But actually, if you think about the way that we connected, was I don't know what happened. I took the digital, I took the bait. We were on a call within a week.
Yeah.
And the only reason why this has probably taken a couple of weeks is because I had other calls. But we had a call within a week. It doesn't take a long time.
Right. And I ended up buying your book.
Thank you.
The connection, reading your book, and then recommending it to the cohort of the CMO Accelerator candidates that I have, and recommended all of them buy it. And I know a bunch of them already either bought that one or Smarketing book already and started reading it, right? So there you go. There's an example of creating a quick relationship that made sense, and then literally kind of riffing off of that and kind of having it grow. Just to finish off that thought on the carpet bombing thing. Here's what people don't realize. When I purposely use the word carpet bombing. Why is that? Because it creates a ton of collateral damage. Like you hit the target, but you wipe out everything around it. And so imagine, like we already are used to it on advertising. If you aren't the person that's interested in the ad, if you see it a million times, at some point you get sick and tired of seeing it and you shut that off. You shut that brand off, you shut the message off. You don't want to see it. Well, two things happen. The same thing happens on social, but at the same time, you basically can also piss someone off. It's just the same as if you walked into a party and you were that guy that was going around and shilling everyone, trying to sell something. You'd be like, get rid of this guy. It's ruining the party. We don't want this person around, right? So, and your reputation gets completely damaged from that perspective. Like you wouldn't want that. You'd never get invited again. And that's the thing. In a community, you're invited in. It's not like you can pay to show up. Hey, I've got my ticket. It's like, no, community, you're invited in. Advertising, you pay.
Yeah, and I want to develop something because you talk about purpose. Mm-hmm. I mean, community for me is really important. It's probably for me. It's I realized 5 years ago that community was probably the most important thing in sales and marketing. Mm-hmm. But you talk about something else, which is about purpose. Mm-hmm. And I think one of the things that's happened is that we've all matured as people and matured as society. And certainly COVID is we've certainly realized that actually we don't want to spend an hour commuting into something. We actually want something more purposeful. And when we talked, you talked about every company needs a purpose more than just selling stuff. Mm-hmm. And what do you mean by that?
Well, I think in the end, and ideally, your purpose should be related to something that you're passionate about in terms of changing the world for a better place in the space that you play. So I think that's a big mouthful. It doesn't have to be, because sometimes you'd see something like a company like, I don't know, Patagonia. Patagonia clearly has a purpose. If you go to that website, the documentaries that they back, the types of things, the things they sponsor, the stuff that they give money to or help, they have a purpose and making the world a better place, specifically that. And of course, their customers appreciate that and like that. So their brand is more than just selling coats and ski wear and all that stuff. It literally is something bigger than that, okay? To me, every company should have something that's bigger than just selling. And there's two reasons too. It's not just only because customers sometimes will often choose a company, not just based on solving a need that they have, but because they know that they may have more needs or they need more of that thing in the future. And they want to see that there's a bigger vision for that company in terms of where it wants to go. Like people invest in Tesla and buy Teslas and all that stuff, partly because, yes, they like the cars and they're great cars, but they also want to see Musk land on Mars and build Mars stuff. And they want to see the Hyperloop created, and they want to see the Gigafactory of data, and they want to see the environment, tackled in terms of less ICE engines. Like it's a bigger thing, and people buy into that whole thing. And that's why the stock's some crazy high.
Yeah, we did a driver's day with Tesla, and it was fantastic. And when they started talking about the engine and stuff, I completely switched off because I wasn't interested. I was interested in the fact that I don't want to keep polluting the world anymore.
Right.
And every time I get in my petrol car, I feel guilty of the fact that I'm messing this beautiful thing up.
Yeah.
And I agree with you that there's something bigger. Yeah. But I also think that people often think their company is boring. Mm-hmm. If you're one of the 100 or 200 email marketing companies, what is it what makes you different?
Yeah.
And I think people struggle with that.
Yeah, it's true. And on that, I mean, this is the thing. Like the other aspect of having a greater purpose is I'll use an analogy. It's like if you were on a ship sailing across the ocean from Europe to North America, and you were on that first ship, and it was like every day you had to get up and you had to deal with it, and it's like, where are we going? I don't know. You got to just get up, swab the deck, clean this thing out, clean the toilets, blah, blah, blah. And then the next day there's a big storm and everyone's sick and all that stuff. And there's just, those trips had to be miserable. But yet it's like, no, we're going to conquer something, or we're going to land on something, or we're going to explore something, right? It's a bigger purpose. Well, it's the same thing with a startup. If every day you're coming in, there's going to be good days and bad days. Some days are awesome. And then there's a lot of days that's like, it's a lot of hard work. So the thing is, if you have a greater purpose, you'll work through that stuff. You'll be like, yes, but we're changing the world to make it better in some way. And we really want to be part of that journey. It's a journey, right? Mm-hmm. It's not just a job, it's a journey. And I think any company that can create journeys like that, that's going to have customers want to be part of that movement or journey. Employees want to be part of that. You'll attract more people that'll want to be part of it. So it's just a good thing. I can't see.
I mean, with Tesla, it's just another car.
True.
You know, it's just a box with 4 wheels. I mean, why is it any different from a Ford?
Yeah, it moves you from point A to point B.
Yeah,
and it does it more environmentally friendly, but it does that, right? So it's like a car, but they made it into way more than that, right? So,
it is. It's like an Apple. You know, you're buying into a lifestyle,
right?
And that's the thing that they've done. And so what is it that we can, you know, as the people watching this, if we want to form a purpose, mm-hmm. what is it that we can do to do that?
So a big piece of that would be a couple of things. One would be understanding your customers, understanding what makes them excited. What are the things that, you know, once you understand, you had enough customers, you can see the things that like really drive them, give them purpose, things that they belong to. That's one thing. The second thing is looking at the disruptions in the overall spaces that you play in. What's happening? How are things changing? Obviously, COVID disrupted an entire planet in every single business on this planet. That's a disruption. And there's going to be stuff coming out the other end of that. There's stuff now, but there's also stuff coming out of the other end that's going to be transformative. So like, where is that going? Like, where's the puck going, as they say in hockey? And then the last thing would be just looking at your vision of your company. Like, what are your employees and your leaders, where do they want to go? Like what kind of technology do you have that gives you an unfair competitive advantage that you can leverage and like make some change? Like, think about Musk. He looks at all these different things, I'm sure, and says, well, because we have all these batteries, you know, having a Hyperloop and having that vision out there, even if we don't own it, maybe not a bad thing. Why? Because Hyperloop is not going to run on gas engines, it's going to run on batteries. So we're going to sell more batteries from the Gigafactory, right? And it's going to be better transportation, and it's going to help the environment. So like the point is that you kind of say, like, how can we take advantage or kind of sew this all together into a story, because marketers are storytellers, into a story that people can aspire to, that they can get excited about, employees and customers and other people in the industry, so that we can all shoot for something that's better.
And then we come back to the community, which is about finding birds of a feather in terms of not going out and basically throwing mud at the wall and hoping it will stick, but actually saying, here is 100 or 200 people that have similar views that we could go and talk to.
Yeah. And once you create that vision, and you share that vision, especially with those people that you know that are passionate, chances are the people that they are connected with in a social world are also going to be probably passionate about the same thing. And it just becomes a rolling thunder. And the idea is your community should have an element of creating a movement. It's got to have
a movement of change.
Right, exactly. It's got to be moving towards change. It's not just a bunch of people hanging out. I mean, it can be, but mostly if it's moving towards something, it's greater. The other aspect of birds of a feather that I do too, and this is a prime example, if you follow these kind of principles, is that, let's say over the next 2 years, you get your list of 200 people that are kind of like leading figures inside of that overall kind of vision / movement in that kind of collection of an organic community, okay? If you eventually become like real friends, I'm not talking about Facebook friends, but real friends with these people where you share, break bread, you're really kind of like, you're excited to be around them, you're learning from each other, is that you then connect to, you should be, like your book says, connect with them on LinkedIn, right? These are the people right? So what happens is over time is that you're actually creating a birds of a feather kind of lens, okay? Because the people that you are connected with really are a reflection of your values and your passion and your where you want to go, right? In terms of that. So now, as whether you're a marketer or a salesperson, you literally can go on LinkedIn and you can search a brand. And the thing about that is, based on the connections you have, especially if your connections are focused on those passionate / community / vision, that becomes a lens that you can look at that brand. Because within the first 2 or 3 search pages of LinkedIn, I guarantee you the people that pop up will be the ones that have more connections, because we always see that.
Yep.
But the cool thing about that is when you click on, let's say there's a person with 42 connections. You click on that person, and maybe they're working in Samsung. And Samsung, who knows? They have like 100,000 people. You're like, how would I ever find a person in Samsung that I would want to connect with that would share common values and mission towards that vision? Well, within you saying, well, that person is 42. You click on it. Well, maybe those 42, you can of that 26 of them are those 200 people that you're connected to, and since you know them really well as friends, you know their values. So birds of a feather. If that person is connected, chances are they're also a person you want to get to know. And you just keep on rolling it out further and further that way. It becomes very simple, and it's a great way of finding people that way.
Yeah. So we're at 20 minutes, David. So is there anything else you wanted to cover today? Because we've kind of looked at the community, talked about purpose and the importance of that, and then come back to community again.
No, I think we've done put it this way. I think the book on social selling that you wrote is a great bedrock, a book in terms of.
Thank you. This is not about me, though. This is about you.
I know, but this is my point that I want to make. If you read one, and I haven't read your marketing book, but if you read that book, I used to say this. I spoke at this conference once, and on the title of the conference, it sounded like it was everyone who believed in social selling. It said something about social marketing, and I said, "Oh, this is great." So I was keynoting. It was the final keynote. But as I listened through all this, everyone was what they were advertisers that were trying to look at marketing as carpet bombing. Okay.
Right.
And so everyone in the audience seemed to be focused on that. And they hadn't made the switch. They hadn't, I'll call it almost like switched religions. They believed in the church of advertising, not the church of relationships. Okay. Yep. What your book does, I find, is a great primer to get people to all of a sudden look and go, wait a minute, I look at the world differently. This is not supposed to be looked at this anymore. I have to look at it this way. So everything I've talked about over the last 20 minutes really just builds on that, honestly.
Yeah.
So that's the reason I wanted to bring it up. Is because if you're trying to find a way, I mean, obviously the people that listen to this probably already believe in many of these concepts.
They probably do.
Yeah, and hopefully the ones I've shared will just build on top of that. But anyone who hasn't seen it, I certainly suggest reading your book. And I know you're like, it's not about me, but it's true. Is a quick way to kind of get yourself up to speed, and then build on all these other principles with guests that you bring on. Honestly.
Yeah. I mean, if people want to, the first thing, if you want to meet people, is run a podcast. Mm-hmm. It's the best way to
absolutely.
Do it. Yeah. And funny enough, we always find that if we tell people to read my book, it either qualifies them in or out. And for me, it's always spend whatever it is on Amazon. If the person goes and buys it and then reads it, they usually come back and say, I want to know more.
Yeah.
I never wrote it for that. I actually just wrote it because I just wanted to write a book, but it's amazing what it turned into. Yeah.
Well, you've called it a lot of those things. I think when we talked the first time, a lot of those things we had stumbled on at the very beginning while I was at Radiant 6, because the world had changed, and we had to kind of live the brand. We had to kind of say, if we're talking about listening and engaging, we better be listening and engaging. We better be starting to change how we do things. So we literally kind of organically stumbled into a lot of the stuff you captured in the book so well. So, kudos to you for that, because it saves people from having to stumble into all this. They can quickly get up to speed fast and then start making changes. Yeah. So
well, Thank you, David, for. I'd love to talk to you further, but the longer these things are, the less likely people are to listen to them, because they make a judgment. Well, I can't spend. I did one with Michael Brenner, which is 50 minutes, and like, nope, he is amazing, and he provides so much insight, but nobody watches it because they go, well, what am I going to learn in 50 minutes?
Yeah.
Because of course you don't know that something's good until you've watched it. So I try and keep the timings down. But thank you, David, so much for coming on and sharing your insight with us. And have a wonderful Christmas and New Year.
And you as well.
And stay safe.
And as you as well. Yes. Let's get through this.
Yeah, we will do. We will do. Thank you so much, David. Thank you.